Welcome back. Today I want to talk about Bhakti Yoga. What is Bhakti Yoga? And more importantly, what part of the brain is getting activated when we practice that? Or when we step into bliss in meditation? What part of the brain is that? I bet you already know if you've been following me for a while. You know exactly what part of the brain is getting activated. But we're going to get into that, and we're going to go across lines so that we can look at different practices from different traditions and understand that their goal is actually one and the same. And this is very important for the pathway of enlightenment. What happens to the brain when we're going through enlightenment? What does that look like? And how does Bhakti Yoga fit into all of that? So get ready, let's get into it, all right? So first of all, Bhakti means devotion. So when you think of Divine Mother, or you think of your Heavenly Father, or you think of Krishna, or if you think of Buddha, and you feel devotion from your heart, and you send it to that oversoul, what Emerson called the oversoul, when you send it to your higher self, that devotion from your heart, when you pray from your heart, and you feel devotion or gratitude or love in your heart, all of that is Bhakti. And the part of the brain that's getting activated is the left amygdala. So it's as if we were born, or we were created with two emotional chips. Do you remember Data from Star Trek? And he was obsessed with having emotions. So he was an android, and he didn't have any emotions. He couldn't feel any feelings, and yet he was strangely quite human. And yet he always wanted to experience the emotions that everybody around him was feeling. And so he wanted a elusive emotion chip. But what Data didn't know, and what Star Trek didn't know, is that we actually come with two chips. We have two almond-shaped parts of our brain, which are on either side, and they are the amygdalas, all right? And the right one is the center of doom and fear in the body. And I have hypothesized that all our negative emotions are based off of that right amygdala, that they're going to intertwine, and they're going to intertwine with our story and other parts of the limbic brain, but the basis is that right amygdala. Now, I proved that to myself. That's another story. And then we have the left amygdala. And this is the basis of all of our positive emotions: gratitude, bliss, joy, happiness. A kind of happiness that you just can't explain. When it's pure, we will have absolutely no reason, and we just feel blissed out. That is the left amygdala. All right? It's a little bit different from feeling kind of an ecstatic feeling through the body. That's the caudate nucleus. But when it's pure, like the pure love of a mother for her child, a kind of pure love that isn't about me, it isn't about what I'm getting, it's just, I just love. I just simply love for no apparent reason. I just love, right? That is a pure experience of the left amygdala. And so when we get into Bhakti Yoga, where we set up somebody, a representation of the divine, right? An image of the Divine Mother, an image of Christ, an image of Buddha or Krishna or some saint that represents to us a symbol, and what is called an ishta. An ishta is a symbol for the Godhead, for the higher self, for the oversoul. I love to say that, oversoul. Isn't that beautiful? It's like it's over us. Anyway, that comes from Emerson, and he was trying to interpret what he was reading about Brahma in the Bhagavad Gita and the Mahabharata. Isn't that beautiful? So whenever we set up an image, and every time we look at that image, we get lifted up in spirit. And so to practice that lifting up, in our hearts, we practice a kind of devotion towards that image. And that's what we're doing in Bhakti Yoga. So we look at the idol, we look at the image, we look at the representative of the divine. Because it's hard to encapsulate the infinite into your mind. So we take a symbol and then we send our devotion to it, right? That, in a nutshell, is what Bhakti Yoga is all about. And so now look at that process and then look at the video I have. It's called Cute Baby Meditation. And this is a very old Buddhist technique that was re-encapsulated by Todd Murphy. And I think he did such a brilliant job. And the whole point of that exercise was to take an image which is really cute to you, like a baby, like a newborn baby. You take that image and maybe you put it on your phone. And you just pull up the image and you look at the cute baby, and instantly, if it's working correctly, instantly you should feel that right away. And so now you're practicing a kind of devotion to the cute baby image. And so it's not that the cute baby becomes the representative of the Godhead in this scenario. It means that you are strengthening your connection to the left amygdala. You're clearing the path, you understand? You're strengthening the path. It's kind of like you're lifting a weight. And every time you look at the cute baby and you amplify that feeling, right? You don't just hold it. You want to hold it as long as you can. How long can you hold that kind of cute baby awe? Or maybe it's a cute little kitten and you go, oh my God, the cute little kitten. How long can you hold that? Look at the picture. How long can you maintain the connection of awe? Oh, how long can you maintain that? And now you're lifting a heavier weight because you're holding it longer. So you do that a number of times during the day, 5, 10, 20 times a day. You lift that weight and you create this connection between your ability to access and perceive that sense of awe and love that is inherent in the left amygdala. And here's the brain science behind this, is that what you use, you maximize. And what you don't use, you lose. So if we don't use the left amygdala, it will shrink. And if we do use it, it will grow bigger. So there's a wonderful example of this about taxi cabs in New York, that they're using their spatial perception so often to figure out roadways and how do I get there and how do I miss the traffic. And it's so complex, and they're holding all of that all the time, that their right hippocampus actually grows. It's bigger than a normal person's because they're practicing so much spatial awareness. So when we're doing Hakala and we're looking at one point and we're opening up our peripheral vision, that is the same neurological driver for spaciousness. And so every time you're doing Hakala, you're maximizing the weight that is working out your right hippocampus. And these are the two parts we really need. These 2 parts. We need the right hippocampus and the left amygdala. So spaciousness and bliss, or love, or devotion, or joyousness. Those 2 weights are essential to the enlightenment process, to the samadhi process, okay? So these are the 2 best weights that we can possibly lift throughout the day to get buff in our brains, to put it very simply. So the more we use it, the more that left amygdala is going to actually grow and get bigger and be capable of stronger and stronger senses of awe and senses of bliss. So if it's a little trickle at first, part of that is your connection to it. And so you're widening the connection so that you get more flow and more receptivity. And it gets easier and easier and easier to connect to that love, devotion, and bliss. Now there's another thing. In the process of Om Japa, in the chakras, right? So the chakras are our nervous system. And we have a brain, and that brain is reflected into the nervous system. And so we say, oh my God, I have hurt in my heart. Well, it's not here, is it? It's in your brain. And your brain doesn't have anywhere to put it. And so it throws it down through the central nervous system so we can make sense of the hurt. And we can say, I feel hurt in my heart. And so when we're practicing Om, mental Oms into the chakras, right? We throw a little Om in there, like a little bomb. And we blow it up inside of the chakra mentally. And we don't have to visualize to do that. We can just feel it. We could just feel it. We could just sense it. We could see it. That's fine. But you don't have to get hung up on visualization, okay? You just throw the Om in there. Or maybe just feel the vibration of it, right? Get into the sound of it, the vibration of it. It doesn't have to be feeling. It doesn't have to be visualization. We just throw an Om in there and it explodes inside of the chakra. And we do that through all of them, especially the lower ones. We do it over and over again. And so we're clearing out this subconscious material. And that means we get clear for a while. And you'll feel that. You'll feel, oh my God, I feel more clear, right? People tell me, oh my God, I feel so clean. That is wonderful. That means you're doing it correctly. The therapy of Om Japa is working. And so what are you doing when you do all of that? Well, you're minimizing the negative. You're shrinking it. What are you shrinking? You're shrinking the right amygdala. Your access is there. It's always going to be there because you got to know when bad stuff is coming. That's why the brain is organized this way. When something bad is coming at us, we have to have an early warning system. So the right amygdala is our very best friend. It's saying, hey, there's something over here. You got to pay attention to it. It's bad. I just know it's bad. And so it's our early warning system. It's our best friend. And yet we want to shrink it because we want to go into Samadhi. And so we get some warning, but we don't need all the warning, right? Because we're living in a very safe time and age today compared to in the past, right? And so we're shrinking the right amygdala and we're growing the left amygdala. All right? Shrink the right, grow the left. Got it? So I know it's a little complicated, but the actions are very simple. We're going to lift the weight and minimize the bad and lift the weight of spaciousness. Lift the weight of Bhakti, lift the weight of spaciousness, and minimize the bad. Right? Minimize our experience of all that is negative. We're going to shrink that right down. So every time you see yourself divided between a path of, I could blow up, or I could just let it go. What do I care? It's all a mess anyway, right? Every time you take the pathway of letting it go, I don't mean stuffing it down. I mean just letting it go. Every time you choose that pathway, you're actually shrinking the right amygdala. You're actually shrinking it. It physically shrinks over time. And all of this is very important for the pathway of enlightenment. I'll come back to that. So the other practice, so now we have the yogic bhakti method, right? We also have the process of metta. The cute baby meditation is metta. And they're practicing the very same thing. Now, some yogis will not practice either of these, but they will practice the Om Japa. And so they will shrink the right amygdala and they will strengthen spaciousness. How does that work? When you get into a more and more quiet state. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect, but as you head towards a more and more quiet state, you're actually heading towards the right hippocampus. Because the right hippocampus is quiet. It is the silence that you're actually seeking. So getting closer to it amplifies it. So the right hippocampus is getting amplified already by the process of becoming quiet. All right? And that's amplified through practicing things which make us feel spacious, like hakala and dilating the eyes. All right? Peripheral vision. So all of that takes place inside of a yogi as he meditates. And so what happens, the right amygdala shrinks. He's doing the Om Japa. He's doing the cleaning. He's cleaning himself out. He's getting expansion. And the charge of the right hippocampus, it becomes so strong. And you'll feel it right here in your spiritual eye, or you'll feel it on top of your head or the back of the head. You'll feel this intensity, this magnetic sensation, right? The first knot of Lahir Mashai. That's why he brought that up over and over again. He wants you to know this is a possible experience inside of meditation. That building up of charge that is taking place in the right hippocampus. All right? And that charge builds up and it doesn't have anywhere to go. And so it jumps into the right amygdala. This is the pathway of enlightenment. You don't have to ever memorize this. I'm going to say it over and over again. It's very important for us to understand eventually. So it jumps into the right amygdala, but the right amygdala has been shrunk. And so because of that, it jumps automatically across the Kameshwar and into the left amygdala. So now the yogi experiences expansion and bliss. And these are the hallmarks of Samadhi. So did you have a true Samadhi? Well, did you have expansion without perception of your body and without perception of your breath? And were you in bliss? Okay? Yes? That was a Samadhi. All right? Those two things coming together, those are the hallmarks. And this is how a yogi will test and how a teacher will test his student. Okay, did you have expansion? Yes. Did you have bliss? Yes. Okay, those are our tests to make sure that this whole process is working correctly. And it all happened because he was shrinking the right amygdala. That was the big work of cleaning himself out, right? And he was also expanding into silence, into spaciousness. That's the expansion. That's lifting the expansion weight day after day. So I'm shrinking one, I'm strengthening the other, and I'm strengthening the other if I'm practicing bhakti. But the yogi that doesn't practice bhakti, he ends up practicing bhakti because he skips past the right amygdala. He's been shrinking it all this time. He skips past it and he experiences bliss. And that's what gives us the Samadhi experience. Expansion and bliss. Does that blow your mind? Oh my God, it's all figured out. And it's all thanks to the work of Todd Murphy and Dr. Michael Pessinger and the research that they did on this in the brain. Not guessing, but actual research into the brain and how this process was actually working. Kind of extremely valuable and amazing. So when a Christian goes into a church and prays to Jesus Christ, they're practicing that bhakti from their heart into the left amygdala. They're strengthening that connection. So they've got one part. So the process of prayer, praying to God over and over again from your heart. How many times have you heard pray from your heart? Why do they say that? Because you're activating the left amygdala. So to hope now you can begin to see that all of these practices are lining up. The process of prayer, the process of metta, the practice of bhakti. All of these are the same thing because they're activating the same part of the brain. And that is the pathway of enlightenment. Right hippocampus, jump through the right amygdala, take yourself over to the left amygdala and experience both expansion and bliss. And now we're experiencing both hemispheres of the brain. So I hope you love this. If you did, be sure to hit that bell down below so I can see all of you